Do you see those engine problems on your screen right now? That is a big headache for a buyer who bought this truck from China. That is one of the reasons why most people have a distrust when it comes to buying from China. But it has nothing to do with buying from China, and I'll explain. I'm going to tell you the 5 exact reasons why most importers and buyers dealing with China lose when it comes to sourcing products. And it's only going to get worse. And exactly what you should do differently. If we haven't met, I'm Donald. I've been inside factories in China from Dongguan to Ningbo. I've seen firsthand why some e-commerce buyers do really well sourcing from China while others do get crushed. What's the problem? So that happened to a buyer who happens to be a client of mine right now because of that particular problem. I mean, needless to say, he learned the hard way. He wired $18,000 to a truck factory in China. 2 months down the line after receiving the truck, problems started. The turbocharger started leaking, the gear mount had no seats, and the electronic control board wasn't functioning. Total nightmare. So now that money, it's gone forever. So is the problem really Alibaba, or is it that Chinese factories are just inherently evil? So my reason number 1 for people failing when buying from China is they buy from whoever replies first on Alibaba rather than looking for the right product cluster. China is highly specialized. If you're sourcing electronics, you have to look at a place like Shenzhen. If you're sourcing commodities, then look at Yiwu. Now, let's go back to the truck I spoke about earlier. So for that cluster, you look at Liangshan County in the Shandong province of China. I do constantly see buyers flying to the wrong cities in China, wasting days and time talking to the wrong suppliers because they came recommended. So why does this kill your business? Because when you buy outside the specialized cluster, you're paying to third parties who may have no idea about what the product is about. Your lead times may double as well, and the factory has no control whatsoever on the component of the product. Now, that's a funny one because they're outsourcing your outsourcing. So before you send a message to any supplier or anybody on Alibaba, research the industry cluster for your specific product. Ask the supplier, what is your main product? If your product is just a side hustle for them, forget it. Reason number 2, sending a wish list and calling it a spec sheet. Many buyers send a couple of photos and some rough dimensions and ask, can you make this? Of course, they're going to say they can make it. They're not going to turn down your money. But here is the hard truth about Chinese manufacturing. The factory will fill in the blanks and they will always do it in a way that saves them money, not you. If you don't specify the correct grade quality, the correct drop test standards, or the exact thickness, you are going to get the absolute cheapest option available. I've seen an entire shipment get ruined because a buyer they always assume the product is going to come in like retail packaging. But sometimes the factory just puts them in loose plastic bags, and that is going to be a nightmare. If it matters, it goes into the contract. So stop hoping and start documenting. Now, reason number 3 is the absolute quickest way to bankrupt your brand or your small business. Skipping pre-shipment inspections. I really do hear it all the time. The supplier sent me videos of the finished product and they look just fine. But a video from the supplier is not an inspection. So let me tell you a story. It's going to take about 10 seconds, so bear with me. A client was ready to ship a whole container of electronic products. Now, I charged them $300 for inspection services, but they wanted to skip this because they wanted to save some cost. So I forced the issue and noticed that 40% of the product being shipped to the States had the wrong electrical plug. So if that container had shipped, the client would have paid $10,000 in freight charges for products he could not sell on the US market. I believe if you cannot afford a $300 inspection fee, then you cannot afford the inventory order, because you should never release a 70% final payment until your inspector gives you the green light. Misunderstanding your true landed cost is the 4th reason. Some people go on Alibaba, right? They see a $3 product or item, they want 1,000 pieces, so they do multiply $3 by 1,000 units, and they think their cost is $3,000. But that is how cheap China becomes a very expensive mistake, because you're forgetting tooling fees, compliance, certification, and testing for different markets, massive freight fluctuations, custom duties, and your cost of capital tied up for about 90 days. So I'll recommend you build a solid landed cost spreadsheet. Factor in the unit price, tooling fee, testing, freight, and inspection fees. If you aren't building at least 20% buffer into your cost assumptions right now, you are playing with fire. Finally, number 5, the blind trust. Blindly trusting factories, sourcing agents or middlemen, and friend factories. Most buyers do think they can outsource the thinking along with the manufacturing. They hire a sourcing agent without a clear fee structure, or they go with the factory that a buddy recommended. But here is the reality though, hidden kickbacks are very, very common. If your agent is working for free or for a shockingly low percentage, you must understand they're working on the back end with the factory, meaning they're no longer negotiating on your behalf, they're negotiating against you. Trust is always good, but trust with verification is how you always stay in business. Demand transparency. Who is the factory? Can I visit them? Can you show me your fee or your charging structure? If an agent will not reveal the factory's actual address, there certainly isn't trust. Sourcing from China doesn't have to be stressful, but you have to treat it like a system, not a one-off transaction. So get the cluster right, make your specs bulletproof, always inspect, know your true cost, and verify your suppliers. And if you're a bit weak on finding quality suppliers to work with in China, watch my next video.